welcome to the Football History Podcast. My name is Nick Hart. Welcome to a new year, dear listeners, 2022. Time passes onwards, doesn't it? Time marches on. So it's quite apt that today, for today's show, we welcome an author of a new book that is available on the market now, a book called Lost: Football in the 1980s. As the years pass by, the 1980s that seem so recent and so relevant to many of us, myself included, fade ever more distantly into the background of football history. But today's guest, Phil Brennan, is the author of a wonderful book that seeks to recapture something of the spirit and the football grounds, particularly of those far-off times. So we're going to cross over now to the interview I did the other day with Phil Brennan. Big welcome on the show now to the editor of a wonderful new book set in my kind of era, listeners. It's a book about the lost stadiums and the lost football scene, the lost world of 1980s football. Big welcome to Phil Brennan. How you doing, Phil?
I'm good, Nick. How are you? Thanks very much for the big intro to the book.
It's a fascinating subject, mate. I think for gentlemen of a certain age, and I'm including myself on this in that category, listeners, and I dare say yourself, Phil, but it does look like a lost world when you look back at these old photos of stadiums and, you know, the whole kind of football world of the past. It all kind of came to an end in the 1980s, when this is like a photographic record of the 1980s in many respects, isn't it?
Well, it is, and people used to say, well, I'm a big fan of George Orwell, and I always believed that the world would end in 1984, and for me it did, because I got married. You can cut that bit out. And it's a strange one how the book came about, because I am, like you say, a gentleman of a certain age, and I like the phrase gentleman. I've never heard that. I've only started being called a gentleman since I got past 60, so I think that's what it was. I was putting together a book on Stockport County, who, as you're aware, I have followed for many, many years.
Yeah.
And when I was furloughed from work, I was doing a bit of work, and this fantastic photograph of the railway end at Edgeley Park from the street just appeared on I think it was Twitter or Facebook. I think it was Twitter, and I thought that's exactly the image I'm looking for to use in the book. And I followed the fella on Twitter. He didn't follow me back straight away, but I knew somebody who knew him, so I rang the lad that I knew, and I said, "Listen, do you know David Featherstone?" And he said, "Yeah, he's a photographer up at our local Nonleague club." I said, "Will you get him to follow me on Twitter or give him my number? I need to speak to him."
Right.
And he followed me back, and I sent him a message. He said, "Look, Dave, I'm working on this book. I'd really like your permission to use that image." And he was like really overcome that somebody actually asked for permission. But, you know, old school, that's what you do, isn't it?
You're supposed
polite.
to. You're meant to. But yeah.
So
yeah.
He said, "Well, actually, I've got about 4 or 5 from that same game. Give us your email, I'll send them to you." And I was amazed at how good and they look like watercolours, and I wasn't quite sure why they look like watercolours to a certain degree, but apparently they're from a reel.
You're right.
So basically,
okay. Yeah.
So he saved them from a film reel. So anyway, he sent them me, and a couple of days later, I noticed he put some more on from a different ground. I'm going to say Swansea, but I'm not sure it was Swansea. It was, you know,
right.
It was definitely somewhere
like the Betchfield. Yeah.
Yeah, and I rang him up. By now I'd got his number. I rang him up and said, "Dave, what are you doing?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Stop putting the pictures on Twitter and Facebook without watermarking them." And he said, "Why?"
Well, yeah.
So I sent him a photograph of a mug of the very image that I'd loved, the Stockport County one. Somebody had made a mug of it. And I said, "Look, this is what you're missing out on."
Yeah.
So people are just stealing your stuff. And he said, "You know what?" He said, "You're not the first person to say that." I said, "And I won't be the last."
No,
so,
no.
And then we sort of had a couple of conversations. I said, "Listen," I said, "how many of these images have you got?" And he said, "Well, I did the 92 club back in the 80s.
Oh, wow.
And I took photographs everywhere I'd been."
Right.
So of course my ears pricked up, and I'd already done, again, people are probably aware, we've done a series of non-league groundhopper diaries, which is a similar sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I said, I'd like to talk to you about, putting a book together. And he was like, oh, I can't write. I said, well, that's very good, because I can. So
the two come together, yeah.
So we made a couple of appointments to meet up, and he was a bit nervous about COVID and this, that, and the other. And I'd gone back to work by then.
Right.
And we met up in this lovely little cafe in Atherton, where he's the photographer for Atherton Collieries. For those who really want to dig him out, he goes all over the country, all over the northwest, watching Atherton Collieries these days.
Yeah.
So we met up in this little cafe, and I showed him the copies of the non-league diaries, just to show him that I was genuine. I wasn't just looking at stealing his images. And I could see that he really liked the idea of this. So I said to him, look, if you're happy with what, I'll edit your book, because I love football photographs. I love that period of time. Actually, a bit after my time. I mean, I'm a gentleman of a little bit older age, really, because I was following county back in the, I still follow, but I started following county 66, 67.
Oh, right, you're from the 60s. I thought, yeah.
Well, no, and my sort of period was sort of Friday night football in the late 60s, early 70s, mid 70s, right through until I got married, really.
The rest is history.
Sorry, Liz. But, so I was really interested in these, because I've done the 92 of sorts. I've done a lot more than the 92, really, with the way things have changed. But I'd never really sort of had any photographic evidence. So he sort of sent me a big batch of images, and
right.
I have to say, I was quite shocked, because I'd assumed, wrongly as it turned out, that he was an official photographer. And he wasn't. He just usfrom to go to games with his camera in his pocket, and a lot of the images are from obviously he's took pictures from outside the ground, but he's got images of on the terraces. There was a couple we had to leave out, really, because we didn't want people saying, "Hey, I don't want to be photographed running across the pitch."
Well, I suppose there's always that side.
But no, I got through all these images, and he was the reason he'd never really looked at doing anything with them was when he first put the idea of going to do the 92 club. There's a theme here. He was married when he started the idea.
Is there a punchline coming to this?
Some sentences don't need finishing, do they? He'd done the 92, and what he'd done is he'd got his own little criteria, and we've all got our foibles where football's concerned. There's certain things that we like to do. So what he'd done is set himself this target of, and I'd forgotten to say right at the very beginning, he's actually a Manchester United fan, and he has been for all his life, and he doesn't go anymore, because most of them don't, do they? But he'd started out his first ever game. He'd gone to United as a schoolboy, and his dad had given him a brownie, and he got into the photography that way, and then he started getting into taking photographs of football. So he decided that he was going to do the 92. But he wanted to do it in such a way that he didn't see the same away team more than once.
Right, okay.
So I think, from memory, he started in 82, 83.
Yeah.
And so it went over 4 or 5 seasons.
What an achievement, Phil. What an achievement that is.
And obviously all self-funded. He wasn't an official, so he just used to... So when Southend used to play on a Friday night, he went all the way to Southend on the Friday night, and then went to somewhere like Reading on the Saturday.
Right, stay over, yeah.
So it was like a military operation.
Yeah, planning, and that's an incredible amount of planning involved in that, really. Name of the book, listeners, the name of the book is Lost, and I think that's a great title, Phil. Lost. Football in the 1980s, a unique photographic record of the stadiums, the terraces, the players, and the fans that defined the footballing era. Great title, because it does rather feel like a lost era, doesn't it, when you look back at it? Because football's transformed this. Have you mentioned Manchester United already? I suppose Manchester United superseded by Manchester City into this new era of multi-million, billion-pound football that I don't know about you, Phil. I feel slightly removed from it, and I think it's because, the images that you've captured in this book do have a certain warmth and resonance. And I know that the 80s and before are now written off as that phrase, slum football, played by slum people and slum stadiums. But bloody hell, it was fun, and you felt like you were enjoying yourself at the football in a way that doesn't seem quite so resonant now. Would you agree with that?
Well, I would and wholeheartedly agree, but I'd go a little bit further. I don't think you're allowed to enjoy yourself anymore at football. It just seems to be that. I mean, I've not been in the Premier League ground for years. I mean, obviously, I do a bit of freelance journalism, so I do go. I go to Wembley for certain games, and certainly the non-league games. I think there's a lot of people, not just my age. There's a lot of people that have drifted away and into non-league football, which has been great. I mean, I'm a long-standing non-league supporter. I played it when I was a kid, and obviously when I was working at Stockport, we decided to give non-league a taste. Give it a try. And unfortunately, they're still there. But it just it's when I started looking through these photographs, you're quite right. It took me back. I'm 63, so when I started this book, I was 62. It was last year when I started doing it.
Yeah.
But as I said earlier, I'm a Friday night football man, so I would go with my friends to United one week, City the next, or go to away games. And in the late 70s, you probably won't want to hear this bit, but we became very close to a group of Chelsea lads. So we would then go down to Chelsea to watch them, or that we'd go and watch them in the Northwest. And so there's still that affiliation, by the way. There's quite a lot of Stockport lads who are very close-knit with a group of Chelsea lads. And it's just, I think from memory, it was a Friday night football match, and there was a group of them up for a Saturday game. So they came to Aitley Park on the Friday night. As it was in those days, you were curious as to who the group of strange-looking people were, and it was a funny one. It actually, there was no trouble. It was like, well, we're here because we're Chelsea and we're this, that, and the other, and it just, a friendship grew from that. But so when I started looking at these photographs, and I'm thinking, oh man, I remember that ground when it looked like that. And I've been back to a lot of them. Obviously, when Stockport moved up to the Championship, there's a lot of the clubs that we played, in and around. I think I'm just thinking about it. There's a few photographs in there from Coventry, and when people look at it, so these photographs. When did Coventry win the cup? Was it 87?
87, 88, wasn't it? Or 86, right, 87, something like that.
Yeah. So 87, I think, is the last year that some of these images are in the book, because he went to watch Coventry versus Watford, and it was the start of the following season, or early on in the following season. Yeah. And when people see those photographs, they'll be amazed. The whole, you probably remember it, but Coventry's home end, as well as having all the terraces down the sides, was like a mud heap. And there's hundreds of Coventry City fans, and it's a sunny day, so it's dry mud, and there's hundreds of Coventry fans sat on mud bonking or banking, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Thinking that was the year they won the FA Cup. They've not got a proper stand. It's mad.
No.
But I mean, they're obviously they've had a few issues since then, and moved out, moved back in, moved out again. It's those sort of things, when people start changing grounds and improving grounds. I think that's what this book is. It's a charm. It's a real charm to the book, because a lot of people, let's say people in the 20s and 30s. I showed my son some of these images. He's 26, and he's, unfortunately for him, he'd been brought up on Stockport mainly in non-league football, because he doesn't remember. He was only 10, 11 when he dropped
just a
out.
kid. Yeah.
Maybe 13 when he dropped out of non-league into non-league football. But so he doesn't really remember going to league grounds. But when I was showing him these images, he's like, "Wow, people actually put up with that." It's like, in the football league sort of thing.
I think it's one of the things that, I mean, there's a number of things that struck me as I was thinking about the book. One was the ease. I mean, from the Manchester area, you could think about, you could just pay on the gate. You go to Stockport on the Friday, you go to United or City or wherever else, wherever else your choice was. In London, you could alternate between, for me, Millwall one week, Charlton the next. You could just turn up. You paid on the door, you got in. There was none of this. I don't know if it's complexity, but football now seems to have become something like the theatre, where you need a ticket to get in. You can't just go on the day or with very short notice. And I think we've lost something, Phil. There's a fun and spontaneity that comes across in the book that has gone from the game and won't come back, I don't think.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. I remember, like, after the game on a Friday night, we'd be in the pub till locking up time, and then we'd all be like, "Where should we go tomorrow?" And we'd just go somewhere. So you're quite right. I mean, just going back to my son, this year, obviously County had a decent cup run, and went to Bolton and went to Rotherham, and then I show him the photographs in the book of what Burnham Park looked like, rather than the Reebok or whatever it's called this year, and then took him to the New York Stadium, which is still makes me giggle every time.
That's a wonderful name, I think.
Yeah. And then I show him Millmore, and that's when I'm saying he's looking at it thinking, when he does go to a football league or Premier League ground these days, and then he looks at what it used to look like, it's a real. I can see in the confusion. He's looking at it. So you used to go and stand. Like, and
90 or 2 hours or whatever. Yeah.
And you remember the massive, I mean, they were massive when you look back, the massive open terraces at places like Bradford, Valley Parade and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you just look at them and think, I mean, do you remember the old Bob Lord stand? It seems to go on forever.
Yeah,
you're going up them steps.
Yeah. I mean, the Valley, Charlton's Valley was a massive round.
Oh, there's a couple of belting photographs from the Valley, and one of them, in fact, I think one of them's on the back cover. Yeah, there's one on the back cover, and there's you see that, and I hesitate to use the word style, but the style of clothing that people used to wear at football. I won't have a bad word said about it, to be honest. I mean, I love the fact that I lived through that punk era. I dressed like things like that, and then you get a bit more baggy in the 80s and stuff. So it's what we
wore.
And I listen to my son-in-law now, who's 36, 37, and thinks he's invented drain pipe trousers with no socks on. No, that's the beauty of the book, and some of the images that David's taken from actually on the terraces. I mean, there's one or two in particular. I said to him, "That lad looks like he was ready to give you a slap round the face for taking his photograph." And he said,
"No." Have his picture taken.
Yeah, but I mean, when you think back to that era as well, that they probably didn't want the photograph taken.
I certainly didn't. Another thing that struck me thinking about this book, Phil, is stadiums of the 80s, which were still probably that last era where the game was still in touch with its working class roots. The Victorian era, the industrial, the kind of the city kind of origins of modern day professional football. You could still see a direct link with it, which faded with the arrival of the Premier League, didn't it? And then the move towards out of town stadia, all seated stadia, where you're kind of monitored and photographed the moment you set foot across the threshold. I mean, back in the 80s, I mean, I well remember in the aftermath of the disasters of the mid 80s, which is when the rock kind of set in for the game in some respects. Some would say it improved from there, but I'm not so sure. But it's, for the most part, what I really like about your blurb, and I think this is something that doesn't get said enough, was the enjoyability, the fun, the energy of stadiums in those times, the chants, the terracing, all that came with it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously Lost is, you know, I have to give credit to Merv. As you know, Merv's a big Millwall fan, and he's our publisher. So Lost was the immediately when he saw the photographs, he sort of said Lost, you know, and it stuck, and it became the working title, and then there was no need to change it because it made perfect sense. And I'm you know, even though I'm the age I am, I never got a chance to go to the old end because we very rarely played each other. So
we didn't.
Although I did go to, was it 96, 97, and we came down. It was a fantastic season for us.
That's right, yeah.
It was a season where we went up to the Championship, but we came down, and I always remember I'd always heard these big stories about, you know, you don't want to go to Millwall and win. We were particularly good that season, and I think we were winning 3-1 with not long left. And I remember the lad that I was with was like thinking about leaving early, and I said, "Oh no, I'm not going. I never leave early." And he's going, "But it's Millwall," and I was like, "Yeah," and he was like, "No, we," and then you scored to make it 3-2.
Did we pull it back?
And
did we make it? Did we
and
lose?
Then you made it 3. You made it 3-3, and there was only about a minute left, and we looked at each other and went, "That's all right. We'll settle for a draw. Yeah, we'll settle for a draw. Nobody's going to be angry with us if we draw." And as we looked at each other, congratulating each other on the fact that we were going to get it out alive because we'd not won, Alan Armstrong popped up and made it 4-3. And we sort of went into a semi-cheer and then thought, "Oh, no." But in all honesty, the lads that we met outside, they were absolutely top-notch. And in fact, when you came for the return, I won't mention the score, but my daughter was the mascot, or one of the mascots. She was our mascot because it was her birthday. And Ray Wilkins, God bless his soul, was fantastic with her. And you know, he took her into the Millwall dressing room, introduced her. I think she was about 12 at the time, 11, 12, and he introduced her to all the Millwall lads. And he was top notch, a real gentleman. And we actually met up with a couple of the lads that we'd met earlier on in the year, the previous year, and we had a quiet beer with them, and they were just, you know, it was really strange. I've only ever met Millwall. The only other time I met Millwall fans was going back to the book, is the old Shrewsbury Stadium with the little, was it a coracle? They used to, and they used to have the little boat for when the ball got kicked into the river, and we'd played them in the FA Cup, and it had been a bit lively, so we were late getting back to the station. And when we got to the station, they wouldn't let us onto the platform because there was some gentlemen from Millwall who were having words with the local constabulary about why they couldn't get off the train and go for a beer in Shrewsbury. But no, that's about the only time. But you know, so I've never really. And then obviously I met Merv years and years later, and he saw the light and married a Stockport girl.
So he's up that way now, isn't he? What's your favourite picture in the book, Phil? What would you choose your favourite image of the group?
I think being a Stockport fan, one of my favourites is Tranmere, a game at Tranmere, and it captures there's two pictures from that game where we played in a very iconic yellow and green Adidas kit, which you can't buy for love nor money anymore. And but there's one shot where it's got the terrace with a few county lads on that I recognise in their star jumpers and baggy jeans and stuff.
Of course, the
other one has got a picture of I think he died recently, David Phillips, who used to play for Stockport, Colchester and that, but also one of my all-time heroes at Stockport, Mickey Quinn. I sent the photograph to him because I still speak to Mickey quite a lot, and he actually did an after dinner for me a few years ago. He's a top bloke, so I sent him the photograph, and he really appreciated it because he said, "Oh, I look a lot slimmer now." I don't remember being.
I was going to say he was a very useful striker, but he wasn't. He was quick over a short distance, Mickey Quinn, wasn't he? He was very fast over a short burst. You know.
He always said he was the fastest over 5 yards in the league.
Exactly.
But you
No
know,
further.
yeah. But you know, we've had some great stories off him over the years, and he's been, as I say, he did a great after dinner for us once at the club when we were desperate for funds. Didn't charge us a lot of money. In fact, I was told that Eric Hall could get him for a fee, and I'd already spoken to Mickey, and Mickey had agreed to do it for 500 quid less than Eric Hall wanted to charge us.
That was Eric's 500 quid, I think. Well, I mean, I've got my favourite stadium of that era, but I'm going to ask, what was your favourite stadium? I mean, leave aside Stockport, that might be an unfair.
No, to be fair, that was never.
Ask.
It's hard to, you know, when you look at. I think I'm probably going to say Springfield Park.
Okay,
because I remember, because when they came into the league, I'd actually played against them as a kid,
right?
And you know, they were a totally different club by the time they came into the league, but they were still a non-league football club. They had, I don't know if you ever got up to Springfield Park, but they had a hill.
No.
The away end was a hill, and when I say hill, it was very, very steep, and it had a little terrace on the top of it. It looked daft. Had this little terrace on the top of the hill, but you can imagine one sprinkle of rain on there and nobody was stood on that.
Become like a slum, I would imagine.
Oh God! And you know, being obviously local to us, and when they first came in league, we played them a lot. We always seemed to get them in the cup, and also we got Mickey Quinn from there for. In fact, they paid us to take him off their hands. So, you know, it's. So yeah, I think when I look back at, and I've been to far more, you know, salubrious grounds, and I've been to, you know, grounds that I've really, you know, look at them in amazement. But in the book, I would say that, you know, I love the old Tranmere ground, and I love the old, but Wigan, I think, just really takes me back to a time when, you know, we were young and carefree, and, you know, we just had a laugh at the football, as you said earlier. We actually enjoyed our days out.
I think it's that, isn't it? It's the personal nature of it, and you know, you see online a lot, and I know in the book there are images that will be personal to for many people, and it's capturing that sense. I'm going to discount the Den, because obviously that has a unique place in my memory, but I thought I'd choose Easterville for Bristol Rovers as a favourite ground, because in many ways. It was a greyhound stadium, really, wasn't it? And
well, just an interrupt you there. It's one of the grounds I've been to where I've seen Speedway and football.
Oh right, okay. I never saw anything else. I saw us play there, but I just love that. I mean, they had roses behind the goals there, Phil, didn't they? They had like a rose bed, and I thought that's really odd. It's really odd combination of.
There's a section in the book of people where, you know, we've got images of certain people, and one of them was actually a lady from Bristol Rovers that we used as part of our promotions for the book, where she looked such a happy soul, and we were just trying to get hold of her, and we never actually managed to find her, but we got a lot of messages from Bristol Rovers fans. Oh, that's Irish Rose, that's or Irish Mary or Irish Rose. And it was like everybody from a certain age recognised her, and it was so yeah. Eastville, you know, it was next to a sort of. Was it next to a canal? Was there a canal or something? There was the
motorway across one corner. There was like a big Wimbledon used to have this a big kind of electric pylon. You know, with wires going across another part. Then you had the oval of the Speedway Greyhound Stadium with the football pitch in the middle. And at one end, the home end, which got quite lively when I went down there with the Lions, they had these big tote indicators, the totalisator indicators around the top of the cover down at the home end. And I don't know, it was just such a quirky, odd place, and yet, you know, clearly it was loved by the Bristol Rovers fans, and football took place there. And I think it's now something like one of these retail parks, Curry's, or, you know, DFS, or one of those kinds of retail parks. It always just seems so sad that these stadiums fell by the wayside over from the 80s period onwards, really, wasn't it? As clubs started to have to relocate to normally out of town, rather soulless places. I kind of hate that development, Phil. The kind of Readingisation of football. You know, the move to edge of town, edge of Tesco's and Sainsbury's and the retail park, and then there's a football ground. Now, football's meant to be played in the town from which the club springs. To me,
well, yeah.
You know.
I mean, the majority of the grounds in this book, they are. When I think back to the ones that I went to, they were always within a cock stride of the town centre, weren't they? They weren't, like how many times, like Shrewsbury, places like that, you'd be in the pub until about 5 to 3.
Because you could just walk around the corner.
Yeah, you could just walk around the corner. I mean, there's some, obviously there were grounds like Crewe and Southport and Halifax where you could actually go in the social club, which was part of the ground.
Yeah.
So, and it's just like you say, when I didn't realise that Millmore's still there when we went to Rotherham.
Yeah, because I looked.
Weeks ago.
This is going to be a secret confession for listeners, and I don't know if you do this, Phil. You can confess it too if you do. But I spent a fair chunk of time looking on Google Maps at the site and location of former football grounds, and I was amazed to see that Millmore, Rotherham, is still there. I don't know if they use it for reserve football or if any other.
No, I think it's derelict. I think it's actually derelict.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I mean, I'm sort of I don't quite do the Google Map thing, but I do the if I'm going to see a client and I know there used to be a football ground in that town,
right.
I will definitely go to where that football ground was, and in a lot of cases I'll go into the old ground or what was the old ground.
What was there? Yeah.
If there's some sort of structure still there, and I'll take loads of photographs for my own. This
is destroying our credibility. Our punk rock credibility is going out the window, Phil. Not mine has already.
I think there's something really sad about an empty, derelict football, stadium or ground.
Absolutely.
You just when you look at them and especially if you've been there and if you've been lucky enough to play a game there, or like most cases. You've been there to watch a game, win, lose or draw. It takes you straight back, and it's just so sad that, that a ground. In some respects, I'd rather it was flat and gone than something built on it or left
no trace.
In a ghostly manner. It's just. I mean, I remember going to Scarborough. We were going up to Scarborough for the weekend, and I took a detour to convince myself that they will have done something with the old Scarborough ground, and at the time they hadn't. The two old gates were still there, chained together. The funny thing is with those gates, that was last time I went to the old stadium, they were still there, the old McCain Stadium. And then last year, I think, was it last year before? Last year we went to Whitby for a weekend, and on the way through, we sort of went through Scarborough, went to the new Scarborough ground. I went to meet the manager, actually, but as it happens, and then I realised that the old gates from the old Football League Scarborough ground, they've actually reused them on the new purpose-built ground,
nice touch.
Is... Yeah, and because I just thought they looked nice. They looked daft in a way because the new ground's like, a flat pack, and then they've got these really beautiful ornate old gates. But it's nice that they've had a nod to the past.
There's a link. Middlesbrough have done the same thing. I was up at Middlesbrough the other week, and they've got a statue of one of their former players. But right by the side of the old Ayrton Park, the ornate gates that they've retrieved from the old ground. It is a nice touch. I think Wickham have done something similar as well. They've got a relatively new ground. So I mean, it's nice to see these nods to the past. I personally, I'm a great one for looking on Google Maps, listeners. I think that's probably going to destroy any remaining credibility I've got left for looking at street views of the Dell in Southampton and Bradford Park Avenue's location, stuff like that. But there we are.
Well, like I say, is because I cover a lot of grounds for the non-league paper. I do tend to, especially if it's a new ground, I'll go to the old ground on the same day just to see,
just to link it.
And it's really strange. even in non-league football, that's happening. Grounds are disappearing and being replaced with, a newer flat pack version or whatever. I mean, Chesterfield, I know there's the non-league now. I actually think their new ground's not that bad. It's not.
I like
it's one of the best. One of the better flat packs, I think. I mean, maybe
agree.
Because it's still, it's not quite in the town centre, but it's not. It's not in an industrial.
No, it's not so
state.
far out. No, you can walk there from the station. And I agree.
That's one of those that I quite like. I know. I was just going to say, do you know what? We're at Stockport, there's been so much uncertainty over the previous years, and there's been talk of moving out and this, that, and the other. But for the first time in my life, and probably first time in Stockport County's history, they've actually got a chairman who's got more money than God. So it's he's done. He's done so much good stuff with the ground that that ground's never. We're never moving out of Edgeley Park now. And there's plans to keep improving the ground and putting it another standing and stuff. So it's been a long road to. Obviously, we've still got a way to go to get back in the Football League, but with Mr. Stott in charge, I don't think it'll be too much longer.
Well, it'd be great to see Stockport back in the Football League, Phil. And I also want to include Notts County. I'm trying to think of.
I don't want them back in.
You don't want them back. All right.
They can come back in after us as long as we're back in first. No, I get what you're saying. I mean, in all honesty, and I know when you look how many ex-league teams are in that.
Yeah.
But look at what Sutton are doing. Sutton are on the, I know there's still a way to go, but they could actually go up again, and that happens a lot with teams that come out of the non-league. The top, and I say it all the time, the top 10 in National League would be as good as the top 10 and probably better than the top 10 in League 2. It's so much better now, non-league. The standard of non-league football. It's not like the team of decorators and bakers and butchers and candlestick makers. It's so hard to get out of this division now.
But the National League has become a kind of Division 5, effectively, isn't it? Of football, if you want to call it in those terms. But I do agree. I think the kind of the wider the opening up of promotion and relegation to and from League 2 into the National League has been overall a good thing. It does get painful, obviously, for one or two big names, and include Stockport in that. But yeah, it'd be great to see. It'd be great to see the return of Stockport first, then Notts County second after you've made your comeback. Phil, that's wonderful stuff. I just want to give a shout to the book is called Lost Football in the 1980s. It is on Amazon, listeners. I'm looking on Amazon right now. $17.99. You can get a Kindle version. It's a photographic record of the stadiums, terraces, players and fans that defined my footballing era, Phil, and I know quite a few other people's too, and it sounds like an absolutely fascinating book. Big thank you for taking time out of your day, mate, to sit in your car and talk to me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Big shout out to Merv Payne, Millwall fan of the parish, who is actually the publisher as well. So
he is. I think you can get it. It's on Victor Publishing, which is Merv's company, but I've found it on Amazon. So let's back Victor Publishing, because we don't want to. The BM off of Amazon will look after itself. So that's Lost in the 1980s, football in the 1980s by Phil Brennan and David Featherstone. So thank you, Phil. I really appreciate your time, mate. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.